All right, hey everyone, it's me, Matt Hribar, here with Speech 101. I decided to make this public. I normally save this for classes or for workshops, but I think today, in today's day and age, right, public speaking, the art of communicating with each other, it's kind of becoming, I don't want to say lost because, right, more people than ever before, more ways to communicate. But in terms of face-to-face communication, people are struggling. We're growing up isolated, individualized in our homes, on tablets and devices. We're able to Facebook message someone all the way across the world, but sometimes when we get face to face, right, it gets nerve-wracking. And the whole point of this speech class really is to kind of focus on it's not just about I'm going to get up in front of a crowd and speak. I'm going to get up in front of 1 million people, 10,000 people, 50 people, and give a presentation about bats. I'm going to give a presentation about the history of Frankfurt, Germany. Good improv on my work. The point is that you're going to have speeches in everyday life, whether it's a roommate who's doing dirty dishes, doing them incorrectly, whether you have a boss that you want to get a raise from, a romantic relationship you want to get out of, the ability to communicate, to form arguments, to gather information, and then to give it to someone. It's crucial more than ever. The world is becoming more complicated, and there's benefits to this globalization. But at the same time, we have to work on our communication. So I'm really excited to do this. And for those who don't know me, you're probably wondering, well, why are you qualified? Well, great question. My undergraduate degree is in communication, broadcasting, double with sociology. So I tell people I know how to speak, what to talk about, how to be eloquent, but also interested in conversations, topics, things of, societal level. So how to talk, what to talk about. My master's degree is in digital storytelling communication, which is kind of a cutting wave of communication that basically means I like to tell stories digitally via audio, video, you name it, writing, speaking, etc. So I work professionally as a social and digital content creator, both professionally for a nonprofit and for my own brands. I teach at John Carroll University for the Tim Rutzer Department of Communications. I am a host. I'm the person that you might see at a Cleveland Monsters or Cleveland Charge game, at a trivia night, a Singo music bingo night, at a karaoke night. I run events. And some of those events, I'm emceeing to 20, 30 people. Sometimes it's 15,000 people. And of course, that, comes with different differences. But I've been doing live events for years and I love chasing that high. I also DJ and I love DJ and I love music. So I'm out there. I'm out there speaking quite a lot. A lot of my work has to do with speaking, whether that's teaching in the classroom or hyping people up at a bar or sporting event. So speaking is very important to me. And I'll be honest, I'm always learning how to speak better, how to be more eloquent. I think I've used that word too many times already, but the point is I'm always learning. And so for me, hopefully through this process, not only will you take away things for your ability to speak with others, but I'll, take some things as well. Because if the more that we can learn to be better communicators with each other, I think the more we'll take away and the more we'll have clear conversation. A lot of time we spend, right? We're getting in the mire. We don't know how to speak to each other properly. So, well, the first question is why study this? Why should I take this class? Why is speech communication important? And there's a lot of reasons, right? It's what employers seek. So this is actually a list from 2014, but I'm sure if we take a look at a current list, it's going to be the same things, right? The employers are seeking, right? Number one, you can collaborate, you can work in teams. Now, for college students out there, right, the idea of a group project, nightmare city, but it is important. And that's kind of why a lot of classes make you work in teams, make you work in groups. Even at my work, we did a survey maybe a year or two ago, and the number one thing that people wanted training on was interpersonal training. How do I work with people? How do I work with people who have different personalities, who have different communication styles? And communication, right? It's something that comes up all the time. People are always like, we want to improve our communication. We want to improve our communication. This is how we can do it is by, hopefully in this class, being able to speak and being able to work with each other. But number two, it's make decisions and solve problems. And guess what? Those both take speech communication. I have to have the ability to have a decision, be able to communicate that to somebody so that they get on board with that decision, and then hopefully that solves problems. And if it does, right, then I get to go and communicate, this is why it worked. Let's do that process like this in the future. And if it doesn't, right, I might need to be able to not underestimate, I mean, to gather myself reasons why it didn't work and go forward as well. Third is communicate verbally. And this goes for both my extroverts, my introverts, my ambiverts. Everyone has a voice. And of course, people like me, we're very loud. We're very obnoxious. We get in the way. We probably say 5,000 words too many in a given day. But that goes for someone who's not speaking. When you do speak, when you do decide to add your voice, or you are asked to add your voice, or there's a moment where you're like, this is my time to speak up, right? That you need to learn that. You need to be able to express that as well. Number four, plan, organize, prioritize. Again, communication. Obtain and process information. So obtaining information, that's the art of listening, which we will talk about, because to have an effective ability to speak with somebody, to be effective speaking to somebody, you need to be able to get what they're telling you. You need to be able to listen and get that input, process that, and speak back. We have a lot of people, and this is really popular on like social media, especially, that they don't listen, right? So someone might, tweet or put a Facebook post where they go, I love the color purple. And someone goes, oh, so you hate the color blue. Right? No, didn't say that, right? Where are you getting that? You're not processing the information right. So that's also really key. And number 10, sell and influence others. I had a student a few semesters ago who wanted to be a salesperson, and yet they didn't really have a lot of enthusiasm or inflection in their voice. And let's be real, when we go to the car salesman, when we go to certain places, we might not want the super schmaltzy salesperson, but we want someone who's information, who has the information we want, someone who's approachable, someone who's personable, right? My realtor, I loved my realtor. And if anyone asked me, oh, who was your realtor? Would you recommend? I'd say yes. Right. And so if I didn't have a good realtor, right, I would be like, oh, don't use my old realtor. So not only are they selling me a house and they're working to kind of influence me and guide me in that decision, right? But they're kind of selling me on their brand and their individuality. Oh, I really want to work with them. Oh, I recommend them. So again, those are things that businesses want. And just so you know, the technical knowledge of a job, ooh, number 7. It's not that important. And we actually know data-wise, right? About 1/3 of college graduates are using their degree in practicum, which means most people, they have a degree in X and they're doing Y. My boss, for example, she went for biology, ended up working at the Cancer Society and got into writing articles because she liked writing. She has a column, she loves writing, but she knew the science background for the Cancer Society, ended up doing a whole career in communications and PR. Right. So again, loves biology, loves science, does science things with her family still, but totally in a different place when you graduate with a biology degree, right? You think, I'm going to go in this trajectory. So it's not necessarily about what you know. Really, it's more about how you can take that knowledge and apply it through other things. All right. So another reason, well, it's building valuable skills. So this is a quote from Daniel Webster. If all my possessions were taken from me, with one exception, I would choose to keep the power of communication, for by it I would soon regain all the rest. And I love that because, yeah, if you take my ability of how to do something, but I can still communicate, I can learn how to do that in the future. And I love speaking. I think as an artist, right, we have this medium of whether that's language or paint, film, etc. That element of being able to concoct, to share stories, to experience humanity through humanities. That's really important, and we wouldn't trade that for anything. I would rather give up many things in my life than give up the ability to communicate and the ability to share and create stories. Confidence, speaking, being able to get up in front of people and speak, whether that's a group of 5, a group of 2, a table of people at a cocktail bar versus, what I do at the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse when I have thousands of fans at a sporting game, right? The ability, the more you speak, the better confidence you get. I have tons of people in my life who say, I hate my voice. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to film a video and hear my voice. They'll go on TikTok and use vocal filters because they hate their voice that much. And the ability, when you get used to hearing your voice, right? you can move on so easily. I used to hate my voice when I was younger, especially because I'd hear it back and your voice never sounds like you think it sounds because right you're speaking and your ears are hearing it differently. And so I'd always be like, "Oh, I hate that. I sound like X. I sound like Y." Once I was able to move past that, right? It built my confidence up for sure. Speaking clearly. And speaking clearly comes with a different kind of caveats, right? It's the ability for me to speak to you right now clearly. But then also, I think some people get overwhelmed or underwhelmed and they're not able to properly communicate how they're feeling. We see this with emotions, right? We have people, unfortunately, who don't know how to communicate their emotions. And imagine being in a position where you don't even know how to explain to yourself what you're feeling or what is wrong or what's right. So the ability to clarify that for yourself or other people, I think that's really important. And of course, thinking critically. Now, I think a lot of people think, oh, well, it's easier than ever to think critically because you have access to Google, you have access to these encyclopedias where 20, 30 years ago, you'd have to go to a library, you'd have to, crack open the reference books for information. If you wanted to know how many miles India is in width, right? That's going to take a journey to find that information. But now it's so easy to find, but still the critical element doesn't just because the information's easy to access doesn't mean that you're thinking critically with it. And of course, listening. The number one rule of having a good conversation with somebody is listening. Right? Unless it's like one of those days where you just want to talk and vent, and the other person's like, uh-huh. Right? A conversation is a two-way street. And so learning more about speech communication really helps with listening. And of course, advocating powerfully. Another issue that kind of arises is that there are people out there who are advocating for issues, but they don't know, how do I reach people? How do I bring this up? There's Garbage Island in the middle of the ocean. How do I talk about that? How do I talk about fracking? How do I make people care? So, learning the art of speech communication really makes you a better advocate for the causes that you are passionate about. And it helps you find your voice. Like I said earlier, we all have a voice. This is a quote from Ashley Orman. Honestly, if everyone likes what you say, something is wrong with your message. It's kind of funny because it reminds me of like pop culture. They say, if you're making music that like everyone likes, right? Do people love it? Right? Is it just fine? Is it background? And I think in today's polarizing world, there's definitely people who hate something that you're gonna say. But it's kind of interesting to think about that way too. If you're not conveying emotion, if you're not conveying challenge, what are you doing, right? And it helps you achieve your goals. Speech communication really can help you overcome some of those hurdles of working with people. Quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson: speech is power. Speech is to persuade, to convert, and to compel. I mean, how many times, right? Like, I almost asked you to raise your hand, but I remember this is, a podcast video. How many times has someone, spoken to you and they persuaded you? You didn't want to go out, and then you're out at the club with them. You didn't know if you believed X, and someone was so passionate about X, right? I had a friend, no names, please, who was talking to someone, and they're like, they're a flat Earth believer, and I don't know, like, I'm starting to think maybe. And I was like, stop it right now. Just because they had some pretty words does not mean they're correct, and does not mean you should fall for them, right? And of course, to compel, right? And that's a lot of sales marketing, right? Some of the ads we see, they're using speech, they're using communication to try and make you buy a product, make you support a brand, make you like, subscribe, retweet, etc. And of course, speech communication helps us right wrongs. This is a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. People fail to get along because they fear each other, and they fear each other because they don't know each other, and they don't know each other because they have not communicated with each other. Right? If we're all siloed into our respective little blocks, our little families, our little common groups, and we don't go out into the world and meet people and meet different people, meet culture and experience, things that isn't, every day to us. And that's the beauty why I love Cleveland is there's a ton of culture in Cleveland, and that excites me and that interests me, and I love learning. I love getting to be in this melting pot truly, because America really is a melting pot. So the more that you communicate, the more that you learn about each other, right? It helps you to right those wrongs, to correct those injustices, but it makes you a better person, makes you more educated, it makes you more mindful. I almost said the meme where it was like, "Ah, just mindful, demure." So let's talk about models of communication, and we're going to talk more about this in the next episode, which is a bit more historical. Well, we start with Aristotle's model of communication 300 years before Jesus, and this is pretty simple. We have a speaker giving a speech, and there's an occasion to this speech, and that speech, of course, given to the audience, and then it has an effect on the audience. Very, very kind of linear here. Let's take a look at an example. Alexander gave a brave speech to his soldiers in the war field to defeat the Persian Empire. So historically, right, we have Alexander and he's like, go get him. Well, I'm sure he didn't say go get him. Go girls. I don't know. Okay, he wouldn't say go girls either. But but the speaker is Alexander. The speech about the invasion. Hey, we are here to invade. We are here to win. Glory to Greece. Oh no, he's not Greece. He's I almost said macadamia. Oh my God, Macedonia. There we go. I'm thinking cookies. It's late at night. I want a snack. The occasion, the warfield. Occasion kind of means location. So for the occasion, this is the warfield. An audience. It's the soldiers. So we have Alexander giving that speech about the invasion on the warfield to the soldiers. And what's the effect? What is the desired outcome of the speech? He's giving a speech to pump up the soldiers so they can defeat Persia. He's not giving the speech with the effect of, oh, it's going to get us through this famine. Oh, the speech is really going to rally us for our own little games on this field, on this war field. And the effect certainly isn't to lose to Persia. It is to, we want to defeat. I am pumping you up with this speech to help you get into that mode where we can defeat Persia. Now, a lot of you out there, we're not living in these lives. So let's take a look at more examples that are a bit more everyday. So speaker, me, Matt Hribar. The speech about the filthy state of the office. Where's that occasion? Well, it's at the office, right? The office is filthy. So the occasion that I'm going to give this speech in is at that office to, really drive my point home. The audience, my coworkers, right? This office is filthy. Who has the power to clean that up, right? It's my coworkers. And what is that effect? It's to clean up the office, right? So if I give a speech to my coworkers about the filthy state of the office, and the outcome is no one cleans up the office, ooh, bad speech, number one. But number two, right, that wouldn't make sense for my effect, right? The effect is for them to clean it up. Okay, let's try another one. Speaker is Tony Ravioli. It's a really bad name. And his speech is why Angelina Argentina, great drag name, should date him. Okay, so Tony is clearly talking, right, to Angelina Argentina. She's our audience. The occasion, well, they're at the bar. They're on a date. Tony took Angelina out for a date. And of course, the effect, well, he wants Angelina Argentina to date him. Right. So this model of communication, it's a really good basic model. And of course, for 300 BC, pretty impressive to have kind of this model in place. But this changes. We get to 1949, post-World War II, and we have the Shannon and Weaver linear model. This one's even more simpler. Sender uses the channel to communicate to a receiver. The example I like to think about too is if you, and it's funny because I didn't have this childhood because I'm like a millennial Gen Z cusp. But if you think about when people had like the tin cans on string, and you have someone who's like speaking in the tin can and it's going through the string and the string like winds its way through the neighborhood. And then you have someone, right, and they're just listening. Right. And when you're using the tin can, right, you have to have one person talking, one person listening. And the linear model is just like that. So I have a sender. And the example here we have is like a doctor. So the doctor's like, hey, girl, we got some problems. I keep using hey, girl. I'm so sorry. Now, the message is going to go through a communication channel, right? Face to face. The channel is face to face, phone call, video call, email, letters, text message, social media. That is where the channel is basically what's holding that message, that space where my message is being sent through. And that could be pigeon carriers. That could be in, a Harry Potter prophecy in book 5 when they go to the Department of Mysteries, right? And the message also so the message is getting sent from the sender to our receiver. Really basic. Now, we'll talk a bit more in a few about encoding and decoding, and of course, feedback and noise. But when we're just looking at the linear model, right? The linear model states there's a sender, channel, receiver. I'm telling you, let's go look for examples. Me, sender, Matt Hribar. The channel I'm using is Canvas announcement, and the receiver is my students. So if I'm telling my students, everyone failed the midterm. Oh God, can you imagine? I'm sending that through the channel of Canvas announcement, and the receiver is my students. Notice how in this model of communication, in the linear model with Shannon and Weaver, we're not concerned with what the effect is. We're not even concerned with like what the speech is about. We're just looking at that sender through that channel, through that receiver. Another one, Tony Ravioli. And he's texting. The texting, I'm trying to do that iPhone. I have my phone on silent, but like the iPhone where it's like tap, 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 tap. That the text messages is the channel, and Angelina Argentina is the receiver. Now, this changes in 2008. Oh gosh, that was a rough year for those who could recall. And this is the transactional model by Barland. Now, what this does is says, no, 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 no. We are at the same time a sender and a receiver. We are always giving feedback verbally and non-verbally. So we're always sending messages. You cannot not communicate. And this, I think, is way more accurate than simply saying, I'm talking to you, face to face, right? I'm sending a text message to my friend Julie. And this provides a bit more context, right? So if it's a work setting, if it's roommates, if it's friends, if it's me giving a speech in front of a class, right? And so this experience we're coming into with different backgrounds and that shaping it, even the method of how we're talking, right? How many of us have gotten that text message that should have been a phone call? And we're still pissed about it to this day, right? And so this example, right? So the tin can doesn't really work here because I'm talking, and at the same time, you're listening and talking back to me, and that's kind of building this up. And especially in person, right? Nonverbal communication is honestly even more crucial than verbal communication. And we know that because, right, think about those text messages you get, and it's like, oh my gosh, are they pissed? Oh my gosh, are they upset? An easy way to tell if someone is Gen Z versus Gen X is, how many exclamation marks are you putting in email? Do periods seem too passive aggressive? So notice how there's this almost over analyticalness when it comes to communicating via channels that are like digital media, social media, texting. And so now we're sending this message, we're getting the feedback back from our message. There's added context, and now we're even analyzing noise. So an example, really just kind of taking it from the basic, right? Person one, how was work today? Person two, it was okay. Now, in this situation, there's a lot of people, no names, please, who would hear that and go, okay, I'm sorry to hear. Cool. Maybe not even pick up on it. Now, to those who are a bit more emotionally astute, right? We'd hear it was okay, and we'd go, oh, what happened? You don't sound okay, right? You're communicating okay, but the ellipses, the fade, the drop in tone, the sulkiness, right? These are things that let us know, oh, it's not okay. And the context of, oh, it's work. So sometimes, of course, we have bad days at work, right? And depending on our relationship and depending on how that text comes in, right? If the text is, it was okay, we'd probably go, ooh, that doesn't sound great. Or maybe if the person's the kind of person who like they don't like their work, maybe okay is good. Imagine getting that text, it was okay with ellipses. That changes it. That makes you go, ooh, gosh, something seems up with them. So let's talk about a couple more things in these elements. So first is encoding. And this is the process of taking an idea or mental image, taking that image and associating with words and speaking those words in order to convey a message. So explaining directions to someone, picturing the landscape and describing it. Oh, you're going to go right up here to Cedar Road. You're going to turn right. And then maybe like 5 blocks down, you're going to see a giant tree. You're going to take a left there, right? You're seeing the vision. You know what to tell them. You know how to answer that question. But you kind of have to take those images in your head and you have to put words to them. Right? For another example, you have a vision of a shade of blue that you want to use in a nursery. Right? Okay, so it's not dark blue. It's light blue, but there's, it's not light blue where it's almost white. It's more like light blue, not like a sky, but like it maybe what you would say like a canary blue, right? So see how even then you're trying to describe something that you're seeing, and that can be kind of challenging. And for some people, that's really challenging, and they actually have a really bad time. Like they have the vision, they can't communicate it. Decoding, meanwhile, is the reverse process. You're listening to those words, you're thinking about them, you're turning those words into mental images. Okay. So if you're telling me about the color, I'm hearing what you're saying and I'm trying to picture the color. I'm trying to really see the color. I'm trying to think, okay, what would I call that color? Right? If you're giving me directions, I'm okay. I'm trying to, okay, I'm going to Cedar Road. There's gonna be 5 blocks and there's gonna be a tree. I'm going to look for the tree. Right? So that's me kind of taking that on and turning those words into mental images. A communicator is all people in the interaction of a speech setting. So that's everybody. We're all communicators. Now, we might not even say anything verbally, but chances are, non-verbally, we are going to communicate something. Even the most emotionless, logical people are still communicators and still will offer a little bit of communication. And those nonverbal behaviors, right? We look for this. Communicators are looking for this because, well, we want to see, are we being understood? How are we gauging your emotional state? Nods, soft gasps, uh-huh, no way. Are we following up with questions? How do we look at somebody? And I've had friends who don't really want nonverbal communication. They kind of just want to vent. And when you offer nonverbal communication, they kind of get frustrated because they feel judged or they feel like, oh, I feel like you're making fun of me. I feel like you're, making this too dramatic, whatever that reason is. But most people want nonverbal behavior because guess what? It means you're listening. It means you're engaged. It means that, you're listening to me. And let's be real, a lot of the times when we're talking to someone, we want them to feel like they care. And for most of us, when we're not seeing that nonverbal behavior that's positive, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to move it on. We're going to change subject. We're going to go, to the bathroom or get a drink and ditch the conversation. So the message, of course, involves verbal and nonverbal behaviors together, enacted by communicators that are interpreted with meaning by others. So, for an example, that could be a speech that's more effective in a suit than a shirt, right? So if I have a really important job interview, part of that message is going to be I'm showing up with that tie. Recently on TikTok there was someone who they got their interview canceled because they were wearing shorts, right? What's the message that sends off, right? Maybe not the most professional. And listen, I love shorts. If I had a job that allowed me to wear shorts all the time, I would do it, hands down, right? Another example, this is more verbally, right? A speech delivered in monotone versus passion. If I talk to you like this, where there is no change in my voice, see how it's just so flat? It doesn't sound like I care at all. And that was really hard for me to do. A plus to me. Versus a passion, a zest. There are probably people out there that you don't understand. Why do people follow them? Why do people engage with them? Why do people lift them up, give them money? But they're probably a pretty good speaker, even if they're speaking lies, even if they're speaking hateful rhetoric, right? Just because a good speaker doesn't mean you're a good person. Plenty of historical figures that were great speakers, bad people. Now, the channel, we've talked about this. This is the means through which that message is sent. Is it sent through a text? Is it face to face? Is it a phone call? Even watching a movie on your phone, that's a channel. That's the way you're watching it. You're watching it through your phone. And noise is anything that is going to interfere with that message, the transmission or reception. So if I'm trying to communicate to you that color of that nursery, right? Noise could get in the way of how I explain that or how you interpret it. And this can be all sorts. Physiological, right? I have a headache. I have a flu. I'm hot. I'm hungry. I'm tired. I don't care. Well, no, actually, don't care would be the next one, which is psychological, right? I've been broken up with. Something's on my mind. I got into a really bad car accident and I'm still reeling. I'm still like in that kind of a trauma response. Physical noise. If it's loud at a party, how many times have you been at a bar or a party with somebody and they're trying to talk to you and you're like, I can't hear. I'm just nodding. I'm just trying to get through the day. Construction site. Imagine a construction site right outside the conversation. How well are you going to listen? How well in that moment do you feel like you are going to care? And let's be real, we are animals. Animals, a little enlightened, free will, whatever you want to say, but animals still. So these little things that right, someone's trying to have a heart-to-heart conversation and there's a giant construction outside. It's really hard to not notice that construction. It's really hard to just take that out of your mind. So that's part of the noise. And last but not least, cultural noise, right? So the greater difference in the worldview between our communicator and our receiver, or in this case, right, we're both communicators and receivers, senders and receivers. the more difficult it is to understand each other and communicate effectively, right? So an example might be, right, I'm from America. And so to countries out there that are very different from America, right, my perspective or my take or my opinion or just my worldview is going to be very different. And that can cause people to be, confused or to not get it, and that is part of the noise too. And that's to be expected, right? Good communicators, though, are going to consider these noises, right? Okay, I know there's going to be construction between 12 to 2 today, and I have to have a really important conversation with Jolene. I'm going to schedule that for 3. I'm going to schedule that for 4. I'm speaking with someone who is from this culture, culture X. I'm going to make sure culture X, they like direct communication, or culture X, they like sugar coated communication. Right. I think about how many times too, like, okay, I don't want to set this meeting for after lunch or pre-lunch because people are going to be hungry and or full later. So, you want to keep those in mind, to have your best potential conversations, really important things that you really want to communicate this to somebody. You want to keep those in mind. Worldview, overall framework through which an individual sees, thinks about, and interprets the world and interacts with it. In sociology, we call this kind of framing a little bit. And my worldview is going to be different from your worldview. We all have different worldviews. And let's be real, a lot of the worldview, it's going to be your childhood. A lot of these things from our childhood, it's so funny. For me, I hate seafood. And ever since I was like 3 or 4 years old, I just hate seafood. And that stuck with me since I was a child. And of course, it's gonna be different from someone who maybe grew in a country on a shore, whether that's Massachusetts, whether that's Japan, whether that's Tasmania, and they're on the shore. They eat seafood all the time. So there's 5 different ways, and I'm gonna be real. My pronunciation here might be bad, so I might need to come back and edit this in post if I get this wrong. Let's start with axiology, the value system. We have different ways of considering what is right, wrong, good and bad, fair or unfair. And that will simply change how we feel about something. So, a great example might be controversial as it is abortion. Some people consider that to be absolutely wrong, absolutely bad, never do it. And others would consider it maybe to be a bit more on the fence, and others would be extremely pro-choice, extremely no. There are absolutely moral reasons why you would have one. And values can be as serious as abortion, but they can be even more casual, right? Think about moving in with someone before marriage, which, 50, 60 years ago, scandalous. Now, today in America, not as scandalous, right? But imagine having to communicate. Let's say you have parents from country A and you have to communicate, I'm moving in with Bradley next week. Uh-oh. How do I have that conversation? Can I have that conversation? How do they see that? Do they see that as right? Um, Cosmology, our second way that our second worldview here. This signifies the way we see our relationship to the universe and other people. What is our responsibility to each other and the world? Now, a big way that I look at this in America is simply, it comes down to, right, we have this very individualistic sense of self, right? Me versus everyone else, America versus everyone else, versus maybe someone who feels like, no, we are citizens of the global world. We need to be looking out for each other. We need to be stepping in. And of course, that relationship to other people, whether I trust people, whether I love all people, that can affect my worldview. Praxology, our preferred method of completing everyday tasks or approach, right? Do I tackle it now? Do I procrastinate? Do I use PowerPoint? Do I use Prezi? Do I use Keynote? So see how these different ways that we solve everyday problems are part of that worldview. So an example would tackle procrastinate. We talked about group projects. If you have 4 people who want to tackle it together, great. You have 4 people that procrastinate, well, they're going to kind of get along there too. But imagine having a group of 2 people who want to tackle it and 2 people who want to procrastinate, and that's really hard. Ontology, our belief system. How do we see the nature of reality? What do we see as true or false? Do we believe in aliens? Do we believe that butter is bad for you? Do we think that the Steelers are going to win? Are we on the same team for football? Do we go to the same college? Do we believe in the same, I almost said believe in the same fraternity. But think about how those little things that make up our belief system, that make up the nature of reality, these are easy ways to bond with people. And that strengthens our communication. If I go to you because I know that you believe in aliens and I have a theory about aliens, that makes it easier on my behalf to communicate positively to you. Right. And that's why, a lot of people who have money, who have time, who, are trying to, make big bucks in this world, they're going to spend time trying to get in with you somehow. Right. I feel like I remember in the office, there was like a picture on the desk and he's like, oh my gosh, like what beautiful children or something. The guy goes, oh, that's like my wife or something like that. It was weird. And the point is, right, you're trying to build into their belief system. I am just like you. Right. So here in Ohio, right? I'm an Ohio person, you're an Ohio person, and my business support local, right? And that is kind of part of that belief system. A pest, okay, this is the one that I'm going to mess up with. So if I don't edit this, I apologize. A pestim, oh my gosh, I'm going to absolutely absolutely murder myself here. Epistemology. Oh my gosh. We're gonna move on. Epistemology, the way that we acquire knowledge and or what counts as knowledge. So for some people, they acquire knowledge through the real world. Some they're going to the library. Some are using Google. Some are using TikTok. So the way that we get our knowledge, the way that what we consider to be knowledge, that's part of our worldview. And that can make it very difficult or positive for these conversations as well. All right, well, this is a really good introduction, and let's not overwhelm people. But thank you so much for listening, and hopefully this starts to really get the ball rolling. When we meet next time on our next episode, we're going to look at the history of public speaking, and I'll give you a clue. Think islands. Think, well, we talked about Socrates already. There you go. So for our next episode, it's going to be about history. So maybe we'll see you for that, or maybe you just want to skip ahead. But either way, thank you so much for listening. And I appreciate it. Have a good one.